Elena Vasquez stood at the window of the shuttle as it slowly moved toward Kepler 7 station. The massive structure floated in space like a giant metal flower, its arms stretching out in all directions, each arm made for a different kind of alien. Some parts were thickly walled due to creatures that required strong air pressure, while others emitted a strange light due to the presence of energy beings. Elena took a deep breath. She had been preparing for this day for 3 years. Today she would address the Galactic Council. Today she would ask them to accept humanity as a full member. After 300 years of waiting, Earth finally had her chance to sit at the great table with all the other races. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Elena checked herself in the mirror one last time. Her dark hair was simply tied up, and her blue diplomatic garb was flawless. She was unarmed, carrying only a small device that translated her words into dozens of alien languages. The airlock opened with a whoosh. Elena stepped onto the station and immediately felt the difference. The air was thick, likely serving various lung functions. The gravity was lighter than on Earth. Her boots clicked lightly on the metal floor. A tall, thin alien was waiting for her. He had blue, glassy skin and 4 arms. He was Zafrian. Elena had studied their culture for months. She bowed just enough to speak their language. "It is an honor to walk among the crystal children of Zephyr Prime," she said. The alien's eyes lit up. Few humans can speak Zayan properly. The sound was like music and the sound of breaking glass. "Welcome, Ambassador Vasquez," the alien answered in English. "This is your guide, Zelmer. I will escort you to the council chambers." They walked down a long corridor. Elena saw magnificent sights everywhere she went. Floating clouds of gas flowed by, flashing and talking to each other in vibrant colors. Huge creatures like walking rocks stomped past, their footsteps shaking the floor. Small, swift creatures like metallic spiders scurried along the walls. Elena had studied all these races. The gas clouds were called nebulae. They lived in the space between the stars and thought very slowly. What seemed like a short conversation to them might take years to a human. The rock creatures were the granite people. They lived on a planet with overwhelming gravity and fed on minerals. The metal spiders were techlings. They were actually machines that came to life millions of years ago. "Your species is very young," their guide, Zelmar, said as they walked. "Most of the council members have been navigating the cosmos for thousands of years. Some have been navigating the cosmos for millions of years." Elena nodded. She knew that. Humanity's space expansion was only a few hundred years ago. Their first encounter with aliens was 300 years ago, when a Zaprian spaceship spotted Earth's first colony ship bound for Mars. Since then, humanity has gradually earned its place in the galactic society. "We're still young," Elena said, "but we're fast learners, and we want to help make the galaxy a better place." They entered a huge room. Elena gasped. She had seen pictures, but being here was different. The room was huge. It rose so high that the ceiling disappeared into the darkness. Thousands of seats filled the space, each designed for a different kind of alien. At the bottom, in seats filled with water, swam deep-sea aliens. They resembled giant jellyfish with glowing, intelligent eyes. At the top of the glowing seats sat the Fire Nation. They were creatures of living flame, capable of thriving only in extreme temperatures. In the middle, seated in standard chairs, were people with a more familiar appearance. They were the race most closely related to humans: 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But Elena knew that just because something had a human form did not mean it would be friendly to humans. Some of Earth's worst enemies looked almost identical to the humans of her home planet. In the center of the room was a podium, where Elena stood to deliver her speech. Above the podium, floating unsupported, was a crystalline object. This was the voice of the council. "They will judge whether humanity deserves full membership," a voice said from behind her. "Ambassador Vasquez." Elena turned and saw a creature she immediately recognized. It was tall and covered in thick gray fur. Its face resembled a wolf's, but its eyes were larger. It was a Krillian. They were known throughout the galaxy as great warriors. "I am Waller Sachs," the creature said, its voice deep and rough. "My people have fought alongside the humans in the border wars." "You are brave warriors," Elena smiled. The border wars was a small-scale conflict on the edge of known space. Pirates and raiders had attacked both human and alien settlements. The humans and Krillians had joined forces to try to stop them. This was a good exercise in human-alien cooperation. "Thank you, Wasser," Elena said. "I'd love to work with you more in the future." Krillian's ears twitched among his companions, signifying his agreement. "When the council deems it ready, they may." More aliens approached to greet Elena. She spoke with the crystal Zapparians about art and music. She discussed science with the Techlings, whose voices buzzed mechanically like insects. She also had a brief conversation with one of the granite folk, who spoke so slowly that each sentence took 5 minutes. Around the room, aliens took their seats. Elena was nervous but excited. She had been preparing for this moment her whole adult life. She knew the history of every species in the room. She understood their culture, their fears, and their hopes. She believed she could convince them that humans belonged here. A deep rumble echoed through the room. It was time for the session to begin. Elena walked to the central platform. As she climbed the stairs, she felt thousands of alien eyes staring at her. Some friendly, some suspicious. A few became openly hostile. The voice of the council began to glow. As it spoke, the words floated through the air in dozens of different languages and symbolic systems. The council recognizes Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Terran Human Republic. The voice said, "Please submit your noble race's formal application for membership." Elena stood in the center of the stage, activated her translator and began to speak. "Esteemed counselors," she said, "I stand before you today not only as a representative of humanity, but also as a voice for peace, cooperation, and the bright future we build together." She had practiced this speech hundreds of times. She spoke of human achievements in the arts and sciences. She spoke of colonies where humans lived peacefully with alien settlers, and of the efforts humans made to help other species, such as providing medical aid to the Twilight folk when they were stricken by a plague. "Humans are young, yes," Elena continued, "but we are eager to learn. We face any challenge with fresh ideas and strong hearts. We have proven ourselves to be allies in battle and partners in peace." She saw the aliens nod. The others were whispering to each other. The crystal beings were humming in unison, indicating their interest. Things seemed to be going well. "We are not asking for special treatment, but for the opportunity to earn our place among you," Elena said. "Give us a chance to prove that humanity can be a valuable member of this great world community." Elena was confident. Her words were strong and clear. I could see that many of the council members were impressed. Even the hostile-looking aliens seemed to be reconsidering their positions. She was halfway through her prepared closing remarks when she noticed something strange. War Singer Sachs was not at his seat. Elena could not see him anywhere in the chamber. It was strange. The Koreans were very formal about these things. They never left their seats in the middle of an important speech unless something was wrong. Elena continued speaking, but deep down she knew it was dangerous. Years of diplomatic training had prepared her for the signs of trouble. The absence of the delegation could mean many things, not all of them good. Elena finally said, "Humanity offers friendship, strength and dedication to the ideals that make this council great." A blast of energy hit her from below. Elena felt incredible heat and pain for a moment. Then everything turned white. Her body was reduced to atoms in less than a second. The platform where she had been standing was empty except for a small pile of ash. The council chamber fell into chaos. The aliens screamed, howling in fear and rage. Security forces rushed onto the platform. Alarms rang throughout the station. Guide Zelmer's crystalline body glowed red from the impact. Some of the nebulae collapsed into trembling masses of gas. The deep nebulae churned violently in the tank, sending waves flying over the edges. It took an hour to find the weapon, a Kurill disruptor, hidden beneath the platform, beneath a cloth decorated with the Terran flag. The device was set to activate when Elena uttered specific words, words she naturally uses to talk about cooperation between humans and aliens. The device was highly sophisticated, and had been installed days before Elena arrived. Someone had meticulously planned this assassination. Someone who knows exactly what Elena will say and where she will stand. Werther Sachs was found in a maintenance shaft near the chamber. He was unconscious and drugged. When guards woke him up, he had no memory of the past 6 hours. Someone had used him to get closer to the platform. Someone had stolen his weapons and murdered Earth's most important diplomat. As news of Elena's death spread across the galaxy, each species reacted differently. The Zafarans sang a mourning song that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The Techlings calculated their chances of discovering her killer. The Deep Ones burrowed to the bottom of their tanks and spoke no words to anyone. But on Earth, the reaction was different. From government buildings in Geneva to military headquarters on the moon and secret bases scattered across the solar system, humanity received the news with cold, quiet anger. Elena Vasquez was more than just a diplomat. She represented everything humanity wanted in the galaxy. She represented their hope for peaceful cooperation with aliens. The idea that different species working together could create greater things than either could achieve alone. And now she was murdered, dead, seeking a chance to prove her human worth. Humanity has been murdered by those who deemed it too dangerous or inferior to join the galactic community. On Earth, President Martinez calls an emergency meeting of the World Council. At the lunar military base, General Chen begins to activate a protocol that has been kept secret for 2 centuries. In research facilities across humanity's realms, scientists put peaceful projects on hold and began researching more sinister things. By killing Elena Vasquez, the galaxy sent a message to humanity. They were telling us that they would never accept humanity as equals. They were showing us that they saw humanity as a threat to be eliminated, a problem to be dealt with. Humanity has heard the message loud and clear, and it is now time for it to send a response. But this response will not be delivered through diplomats or speeches. It will not be through trade negotiations or cultural exchanges. It will not be written in carefully crafted words like peace treaties or cooperative agreements. Humanity's response will be written in fire and steel in the stars themselves. The galaxy chose war when it killed Elena Vasquez. Now it would learn what war with humanity truly means. The age of human diplomacy was over, and the age of human vengeance was about to begin. Captain Marcus Chen stepped off the military transport and landed on station Kepler 7. 3 days had passed since Elena Vasquez's death. 3 days had passed since the greatest diplomat in human history was reduced to ashes by unknown assailants. The station had a completely different atmosphere. Where before it had been bustling with activity and the sounds of alien conversation, now it was shrouded in a tense silence. Marcus was wearing the black uniform of an Earth Defense Force intelligence officer. Behind him was a team of 12 of the finest investigators and analysts humanity had ever trained. They appeared to be scientists and diplomats, but in reality they were far more dangerous. The Galactic Council had authorized humanity to investigate Elena's murder. They said they wanted to uncover the truth, but Marcus knew something deeper. They were trying to control the information humanity obtained. They wanted to ensure that their investigation would produce results, that they would get the results the Council wanted. Marcus was fine with that. Let them believe they were in control. Humans had learned long ago that the best way to get real answers was to make their enemies believe they were smarter than them. Zelmar, their guide, met Marcus in the airlock. The Zapirian's crystalline body was hazy with grief. Marcus could tell the alien was genuinely concerned about Elena's death. That was good. It meant Zelmar wasn't involved in the plot to kill her. Captain Chen, Zelmar said in a musical voice, "I'm sorry for your loss. Ambassador Vasquez was a good person. She shouldn't have died." "No, she didn't," Marcus said quietly. "Either way, she's dead. Now we need to find out who killed her and why." They walked through the station, toward the council chambers. Marcus's team spread out behind him, moving nonchalantly but keeping an eye on everything. To alien eyes it looked like humans exploring the station. Marcus knew they were actually mapping the security systems, identifying potential threats, and recording every detail for later analysis. Marcus had been Elena's friend since their academy days. He had watched her prepare for this mission, seen her practice her speech hundreds of times. She felt excited, nervous, and hopeful, all at once. She believed that humanity could find its place like the galaxy through peaceful means. Marcus had never shared that belief. He had studied aliens for 20 years. He knew how they truly felt about humans. Most aliens saw humans as useful pets at best, dangerous animals at worst. Very few aliens truly considered humans their equals. In the council chambers, traces of Elena's murder were still visible. There were scorch marks on the platform, and a nearby wall was cracked where the panicked aliens had smashed it in their escape. The smell of burnt metal and fear still hung in the air. Marcus knelt where Elena had stood. His equipment detected traces of decomposed human DNA. Molecules that had once been part of his friend lay scattered across the platform like invisible dust. The weapon was a Krillian disruptor, Zelmar the guide explained. Model XK-7 military grade. Hidden beneath the platform, activated by voice recognition. Marcus nodded. He'd already figured it all out from the initial report. How on earth they'd managed to get a military weapon onto such a heavily guarded station, however, was a mystery. He didn't know why they chose this method, and most importantly, he didn't know who had so desperately wanted Elena dead that they had staged this interstellar incident. "You'll have to talk to Wartha Sachs," Marcus said. "He was cooperative," Zelmar replied, but he didn't remember anything. The drug used was extremely potent. They found Tux in the station's medical bay. The large Krillian looked miserable, his gray fur dull and his ears drooping in shame. To his people, losing a weapon was a great dishonor. To have it used to kill their allies was even worse. Captain Chen, Tux growled. "I have betrayed my people," he said. I allowed my weapons to be stolen and used in an attack on the ambassador. You were drugged, Marcus said. It wasn't your fault. What was the last thing you remember before waking up? Tux closed his eyes in concentration. After dinner, he was heading to his room when someone called his name. He turned around and suddenly his eyes opened. He saw a person in a mechanic's uniform. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Are you sure? Oh, that was strange. Humans aren't allowed on this station outside of the diplomatic zone. But I was tired and not thinking clearly. I was about to ask him what he was doing when suddenly, darkness fell. Marcus and his comrades exchanged glances. The humans had drugged Tux and stolen his weapon. A human had been involved in the assassination of Elena Vasquez. This changes everything, Marcus asked. Can you describe this human? Tux gave a detailed description. Average height, brown hair, no noticeable scars or marks. It could have been any one of millions of human male, but Marcus's team had already analyzed the features in their database. They were sure they could find this person. The investigation continued. Marcus's team spread out throughout the station, following leads and gathering evidence. What they found painted a disturbing picture. The person who drugged Tux was named David Park. According to the station's records, he was a maintenance worker assigned to the Foreign Affairs Department. However, when Marcus's team investigated, they discovered that there was no real David Park. His identity was fake, his resume was fake, and even his DNA profile was artificially created. Someone had sent a professional agent to Kepler 7 station, someone with the financial means to create a flawless false identity, and embed it in the Galactic database. Someone wanted Elena dead and was plotting to frame humanity for her murder. But the investigation uncovered something even more disturbing. As Marcus's team dug deeper into the station's security, they found evidence of another operation, fake humans operating elsewhere in the galaxy. Another mission designed to undermine humanity. The captain told the doctor, Marcus's lead analyst, Sarah Kim, check this out. She shows him intercepted communications between multiple alien species. The messages were encrypted, but human computers had cracked the codes years ago. Marcus read them, and his blood ran cold. The messages spoke of humanity's problems. They discussed ways to prevent humanity from becoming a real power in the galaxy. They mentioned incidents that could be attributed to human aggression or stupidity. They said Elena's murder was just one step in a larger plan. Dr. Kim explained that this had been going on for years, maybe even decades. Someone had been working hard to prevent humanity from becoming a real threat to the existing order. Marcus examined the message. The sender had used a code name, but the message's contents gave away their identity. High-ranking officials from at least 7 different species were involved. They called themselves the Shadow Consortium. What else did they do? Marcus asked. Dr. Kim's face was grim. Do you remember the Natera colony disaster? The one where a nuclear fusion reactor exploded and killed 3,000 people? Marcus nodded. Natera was humanity's most successful colony. The explosion delayed human expansion by 20 years. It wasn't an accident, Dr. Kim said. I found a communication about it in the conspiracy files. They destroyed nuclear reactors, and made it seem like human incompetence was to blame. The list goes on and on. Trade disputes that inexplicably escalated into violence when humans got involved. Exploration missions that vanished without explanation. Peaceful first contact encounters that mysteriously turned hostile, all engineered by the shadowy consortium. But the most damning discovery came when Marcus's team broke into the station's classified files. Hidden in the deepest layers of the database were research reports that made Marcus sick to his stomach. The files contained detailed biological studies of human physiology, heart rate, blood pressure, pain responses, breaking points, and more. The data could only have come from live animal testing. Someone had captured humans and used them as guinea pigs. The report was signed by researchers from 5 different species, all part of a shadowy consortium. They were studying humans like lab animals, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited in a future war. How many? Marcus asked quietly. Dr. Kim checked the file. At least, maybe more. They've been doing this for 50 years. Marcus felt a cold, deadly rise in his chest. Elena's murder was no mere assassination. It was part of a coordinated operation to study, control, and ultimately eliminate humanity as a threat to galactic order. The Shadow Consortium killed Elena to incite violent retaliation against humanity, to portray humanity as dangerous barbarians unworthy of true power, thus justifying what they would do next. Marcus activated his secure communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. Within hours, similar investigative teams would be dispatched to every human settlement across the galaxy. They would search for signs of sabotage, infiltration, and conspiracy. They would uncover the truth about what the Shadow Consortium had done to humanity. But Marcus already knew what they would find: evidence of decades of manipulation and murder. Evidence that the civilized races of the galaxy have been waging a secret war against humanity for generations. The Shadow Consortium thought they were clever. They thought humanity was too primitive to understand the complexities of galactic politics. They thought they could manipulate and control humanity forever, but they would soon find out how wrong they were. Marcus sent another message, this time directly to military command on the moon. It contained all the information his team had discovered, including the names of every member of the Shadow Consortium they had identified. It also provided detailed evidence of alien crimes against humanity dating back 50 years. The message concluded with Marcus's personal recommendation. Elena Vasquez's murder was an act of war disguised as terrorism. The Shadow Consortium has been planning humanity's annihilation for decades. We must respond accordingly. On Earth, President Martinez read Marcus's report in a secure bunker beneath Geneva. Around him, the Emergency Council considered the evidence with growing anger. These weren't just alien politicians playing political games. They were war criminals who had been torturing and murdering people for fun. General Chen unearthed classified documents that even President Martinez had never seen, revealing secret military programs that had been in operation for centuries, secret weapons that had never been tested, ships and soldiers that officially did not exist. How long will it take? President Martinez asked. We can have a fleet in place within 6 months, General Chen answered. But once we begin, there's no turning back. The galaxy will never look at us the same way. President Martinez thought of Elena Vasquez, of the 300 humans who had lost their lives in the alien laboratory. He thought of the destroyed colonies, the destroyed ships, and the decades of lies and manipulation. Elena had gone to them in peace, he said quietly. She had offered friendship and cooperation. They had responded with murder and deception. The era of diplomacy was over. He signed the authorization order. Across human space, military commanders received coded messages. Ships began to move into position, and soldiers prepared for a mission they had trained for but never expected to carry out. The Shadow Consortium had spent 50 years preparing for war with humanity, studying our weaknesses and plotting our destruction. They thought they knew everything about human warfare, but it was time to realize they had never understood humans at all. They had studied the wrong things and planned the wrong wars. They had seen humanity's civilized side and mistaken it for weakness. They would soon see humanity for what it truly is, and understand why even apex predators run out of prey. A message was simultaneously broadcast to every human settlement across the galaxy, from mining outposts in the asteroid belt to research stations at the furthest reaches of known space. The same encrypted signal was transmitted over secure communication lines everywhere humanity lives and works. Crimson condition. Elena protocol activated. All units proceed into position. Today we will be removing our masks. Dr. Jennifer Walsh was examining rock samples from Kepler 442b when the message came through. To an observer, she appeared to be just another geologist studying the mineral layers of a distant planet. The 3 aliens working with her, 2 Techlings and 1 Spherian, thought she was who she seemed, but they were wrong. Before becoming a geologist, Jennifer served as a colonel in the Earth Defense Force Special Forces. Her rock samples contained hidden communications devices. Her geological research had actually been spent 15 years mapping strategic locations and alien weaknesses. With the Elena protocol activated, Jennifer calmly gathered her equipment and walked over to the shuttle. The aliens asked where they were going. Urgent call from headquarters, she replied with a smile. You know, the bureaucrats want their reports turned in on time. Unbeknownst to the aliens, Jennifer's shuttle wasn't actually a shuttle. Beneath its civilian exterior was a plane packed with enough firepower to decimate a small city. Hidden in its cargo bay was weaponry capable of shattering a planet. Jennifer wasn't alone. Thousands of humans across the galaxy suddenly abandoned their peaceful activities and revealed their true intentions. Merchant ships that had traded between worlds for decades opened up hidden arsenal. Research stations studying stellar phenomena revealed vast sensor arrays designed to track enemy fleets. Mining operations in dead star systems were revealed to be hidden military bases. Change was happening everywhere, adjusted to the minute. Captain Rosa Martinez commanded the Peace Trader, what most people thought was just a cargo ship. For 8 years she had been ferrying trade goods between humanity and other worlds, and her ship was familiar to customs officials on dozens of planets. Because she always had the proper paperwork and stayed out of trouble, checkpoints let her through without inspection. The Elena protocol was activated, and the Rose's crew went to work. The fake cargo containers fell, revealing military engines. The armor plating on the civilian hull retracted, revealing weapons systems in violation of a dozen galactic treaties. The cargo bay opened, and 24 combat drones disguised as shipping containers emerged. 15 minutes later, the peace ship transformed into the UES Vengeance, a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to destroy a space station. Admiral Martinez, to all concealment fleet units, Rosa said into her comm. Her rank had been kept secret for 8 years. It didn't need to begin Operation Phase 1. Make them understand that they have awakened. The same scene played out on hundreds of ships across the galaxy. Harmless-looking human ships suddenly revealed themselves to be warships. Crews thought to be peaceful traders and explorers revealed their true nature as highly trained soldiers. But the ships were only a small part. On the moon, General Cheng entered a military facility that officially didn't exist. For 200 years, humanity had been developing weapons and planning strategies while posing as a peaceful species. The Shadow Consortium thought they were studying humanity. They were studying their actions. Status report, General Cheng ordered. All fleets report ready. Commander Cheng replied. Phase 1 forces are in position. Phase 2 forces are moving to staging point. We can begin operations immediately. General Chen looked at the huge display screen that displayed the entire galaxy. Red dots indicated the locations of Shadow Consortium planets, and blue dots indicated human assets. There were more blue dots than any alien species could have imagined. What is our intelligence situation? Shen asked. Sheng answered, we know the location of all the Shadow Consortium's facilities. We have detailed maps of their military installations. We know the locations of their fleets, their supply lines and their communications networks. We've been preparing for this for decades. Chen nodded. While aliens studied human biology, humans studied everything alien. Every trade mission was an espionage mission. Every cultural exchange an intelligence gathering mission. Every peaceful contact a preparation for war. Humans had learned patience from their long evolutionary history. They knew how to watch, wait, and gather information. They knew how to appear harmless while preparing for violence. They had done so for millions of years on Earth and centuries in space. Commander Cheng said quietly, are you sure this is okay? Once we start, there's no turning back. The galaxy will never trust humanity again. General Chen imagined Elena Vasquez giving a speech as assassins prepared for the assassination. He thought of the 300 dead humans in the alien laboratory, 50 years of sabotage, manipulation, and lie. The galaxy never trusted us to begin with, and only pretended to trust us while they planned our downfall. At least now we'll all be honest about who we really are, he commanded. Across human space, military commanders received final orders. Ships began to march toward their objective. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Scientists activated devices, stored for centuries. Kryllian homeworld, Krylos Prime, was a fortress world covered with military bases and warrior bands. Their people prided themselves on being the strongest warriors in the galaxy. They had waged war for thousands of years and had never lost a homeworld. Supreme Commander Vra was going over defense plans when an aide burst into the command center. We are in trouble, the aide said. There are human ships in our outer planetary system. Vra looked at the tactical display. Near the edge of Kryllian space, 3 human ships hovered motionless. Not attacking, not threatening. Just keeping watch. 3. Vra laughed. Send out patrols to protect them. The humans knew not to threaten Kryll Prime, but when the Kryllian patrol reached the human ships, they encountered something unexpected. The ships made no attempt to flee or resist. A simple message was broadcast. We are here to discuss Warthur Sax's stolen weapons. Prepare to negotiate. Brax was confused. Humans were trying to negotiate over weapons used to kill the ambassador. It made no sense to him, but his curiosity was strong enough that he agreed to the meeting. What Vra didn't know was that the 3 ships he had seen were not alone. Dozens of human ships were hiding throughout the Kryllian system, using stealth technology to remain undetected by Kryllian sensors. They had been hiding there for weeks, inspecting every military installation on the planet. Negotiations continued just long enough for the hidden ships to get into position. On the gas giant Nebula home, the Nebulans held a daily council. They were living gas beings, very slow thinkers but very long-lived. Their conversations could last for days and decisions could take years. As they were discussing a trade agreement, a human spaceship appeared in the upper atmosphere. The Nebulians were not worried. Humans had been trading within their system for decades. These ships were likely carrying cargo or retrieving Nebulian artwork. The Nebulians did not realize that the human trade ships had been secretly measuring the composition of their atmosphere for years. They were unaware that humanity had discovered the exact chemical reaction that burns nebulous gas. On Zephyr Prime, the crystal beings were celebrating their festival of harmonic convergence, where once a year all of their species sang together, creating music that reverberated throughout the solar system. It was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. Human research outposts had been recording the festival for 20 years. They had analyzed every frequency and harmonic pattern, knowing exactly which sound would shatter the Itsapurians' crystalline bodies and which frequency would cause cities to crumble. The festival was at its climax when the human spaceships arrived. The Zephyrians welcomed them. Humans have long admired Zephyrian music and often came to listen to it at festivals. The Zephyrians had no idea that this time the humans had come to create their own music. However, their most important operation was taking place far away from the alien planet. In the void between the stars, Admiral Sarah Morrison commanded the largest fleet in human history. 50,000 ships of all sizes and types waited in the darkness, invisible to alien sensor. Morrison was Elena Vasquez's childhood best friend. The two had grown up together on the Martian colony. Together they dreamed of humanity's place in the galaxy. Elena chose diplomacy. Sarah chose war. But they both wanted respect for their species. Now Elena is dead, murdered by the very alien she sought to befriend. Sarah is seeking to exact revenge. Admiral, the communications officer reported. All fleet units are ready. Phase 1 assets are positioned around 17 target systems. Phase 2 forces are waiting for deep strike operations. Sarah glanced at the star map on her command screen. Red dots represented Shadow Coalition planets. Blue dots represented the human fleet awaiting attack. The aliens thought they were fighting a primitive race with hundreds of ships, but they soon discover that humans have been secretly building a fleet for 2 centuries. They discover that peaceful human colonies are actually military bases in disguise. They discover what happens when 8 billion apex predators kill the people they care about. Open all alien communication lines, Sarah ordered. The communications officer thought for a moment, then nodded. Lines open, Admiral. Every inhabited system in the galaxy will receive this transmission. Sarah activated the recording system. Her message would be broadcast on every frequency used by every species in the galaxy. There was no way anyone wouldn't hear it. I am Admiral Sarah Morrison of the Terran Navy, she began. 3 days ago, your shadowy coalition murdered Ambassador Elena Vasquez, who sought only peaceful cooperation among humanity. Sarah's voice was calm and cold, like a winter wind blowing across a battlefield. I thought you were sending us a message. You thought you had shown us that humanity would never be accepted as an equal in the galactic community. You thought you could manipulate and control us forever. She paused, letting the words sink in across thousands of worlds. You were wrong. This is not a declaration of war. War means both sides have a chance of winning. This is an extinction notice. You have 6 hours to completely surrender or will prove why Earth's apex predators have survived without natural predators for millions of years. The transmission ended. Alien leaders across the galaxy stared at the screen in shock and confusion. Some even laughed. No human could seriously say something like that. They were a young race with limited technology and a small fleet, but a few of the aliens remembered the old stories about Earth. Stories of a world where every animal tried to kill every other animal, where humans rose to the top of the food chain, more ferocious and intelligent than anything else on Earth. The aliens immediately began retreating from their respective planets. Others laughed until the gunfire began. The war began in silence. Supreme Commander Vrax stood in the command center on Krillis Prime, staring at incomprehensible sensor readings. The 3 human ships that had sought negotiations were still there, motionless in space. They hadn't moved in 6 hours, since Admiral Morrison's ultimatum. Commander, the sensor operator said anxiously. Should we attack? They're just sitting there. Flack studied the tactical display closely. Kirill warriors were accustomed to hand-to-hand combat. If someone threatened them, they would immediately strike back. This weight was like nothing they had ever experienced. They were playing a game, Vrag growled. 3 ships against our entire fleet. They were either out of their minds or up to something. Vrag was right about the plan. Exactly 6 hours after the ultimatum, the human ships finally moved. But they did not attack. Instead, they changed direction and began to move away from Krillis Prime, slowly accelerating towards the edge of the system. Commander, they are retreating, the sensor operator reported. Vrax felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. He had looked forward to shattering humanity's arrogance, but perhaps they had realized how outnumbered they were. Let them go, he ordered. Send a message to the fleet. Lower your guard. Humanity has seen reason. That was Rex's first mistake. His second was failing to notice that the moon of Kralus Prime was slightly out of its normal orbit. For the past 3 weeks, the moon had been intercepted by a human spacecraft, using a massive tractor beam array. Its orbit had been slowly shifting with each passing day. Now it was on a collision course with the planet. The orbital calculations were perfect. Impact was supposed to occur within 18 hours. Krillian scientists discovered the problem the next morning during a routine orbital check. By then it was too late to stop the oncoming force. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice was filled with panic. "The moon is going to hit." Rex stared at his new calculations. The moon will crash into the northern continent of Kralus Prime with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. The impact will shatter the planet's crust and likely wipe out all life. "How is that even possible?" Hura demanded. His science officer triple-checked the data before answering. "The moon is out of its normal orbit. The daily orbital changes are tiny, but they add up over time." Someone had been planning this for weeks. Brax finally understood. The 3 human ships were not there to attack. They were there to create a distraction while the other ships moved around the moon. While the Krillians focused on the obvious threat, humanity prepared for a greater one. "Can we evacuate?" asked Fra. "Not everyone," the science officer replied. "If we start now, we can evacuate about 10% of the population." "What about the rest?" He didn't finish his sentence. Back on their home planet, Nebula, the gaseous life forms faced a different kind of terror. The human ships in their atmosphere weren't attacking them with weapons. Instead, they released chemicals into the upper layers of the gas giant. The Nebula felt the change immediately. Their bodies began to burn, not with fire, but with a chemical reaction that turned the living gas into poison. The pain was unlike anything they had ever experienced before. The Cloud Elder, leader of their species, tried to send a message to the human ship. "Why are you doing this? We have done nothing to harm your people." The reply came from Admiral Morrison himself. "You allowed your Shadow Consortium allies to capture and torture 300 humans for 50 years. You voted to bar humanity from the Galactic Council while they slaughtered our colony. Your inaction makes you complicit in their crimes." "We were unaware," the Cloud Elder pleaded. "The Shadow Consortium hadn't told me anything about these things." "Ignorance is not innocence," Morrison replied coldly. "Your kind have been around for millennia. You have had plenty of time to question what is being done in your name." The chemical reaction spread throughout Nebula Home's atmosphere. Billions of nebulas died agonizing deaths as their bodies dissolved into a cloud of poison. The survivors fled to the cold outer edges of their planet, where they huddled in fear. On Zephyr Prime, the crystal beings learned what human science was capable of when it turned to destruction. Human spaceships surrounded their planet and began beaming specific sound frequencies into the planet's atmosphere. The sound was based on recordings of Zapirian music, but altered by human engineering. Rather than creating harmony, it created destructive interference patterns. The frequencies shattered the crystalline structure at a molecular level. Zapirian cities began to collapse as their crystalline structures vibrated. The beings themselves suffered even worse. Their bodies resonated with the frequency and cracked like broken glass. Zelmar, Elena's guide to Kepler-7 station, tried to contact the human fleet commander. "Please," he said, fighting the pain in his melting body. Many us opposed the Shadow Consortium. We insisted on including humanity in the council." Captain Williams of the Human Destroyer Retaliation Force called out. "Your opposition was insufficient to save Ambassador Vasquez. Your arguments have not stopped 50 years of human suffering. Good intentions mean nothing when children are dying, yet you are killing innocent people," Captain Zelmar protested. "So do you," Williams replied. "The difference is you killed our purity first." This pattern repeated itself across 17 star systems. Each planet of the Shadow Consortium faced a different form of destruction, but they all had one thing in common. These attacks were designed to exploit specific weaknesses that humanity had discovered over decades. The rock-eating granite people found their home planet being bombarded with acid that dissolved their food. Without minerals to feed on, they would starve within months. Machine lifeforms called techlings discovered that human computer viruses could infect their electronic bodies, rendering them permanently inoperable. The aquatic deeps watched their ocean world boil as human ships heated the water beyond survival limits. But the most terrifying attack was one that never happened. The Twilight people were part of the Shadow Consortium, but they were also victims of the Plague 20. Humanity provided medical assistance and saved their species from extinction. Now their homeworld is surrounded by human ships, but there is no attack. Admiral Morrison has a message for them. You were spared because you know what it means to face extinction. You know what it feels like to have your species threatened. Never forget this day. Never forget what happens to those who threaten humanity. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy whomever it wished, or show mercy if it wished. The choice was always there. Across the galaxy, species not part of the Shadow Consortium watched in horror as the destruction unfolded. They considered humanity a primitive species with limited military power. Now they were witnessing the systematic destruction of some of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. The peaceful Rimward World Federation sent a desperate message to Admiral Morrison. Please stop this genocide. Many of us have nothing to do with the crimes of the Shadow Consortium. Morrison's response was broadcast to every planet in the galaxy. This is the price you pay for letting the predators hunt you. This is the price you pay for standing by and watching humanity suffer. For 50 years you have turned a blind eye while the Shadow Coalition tortured and murdered humanity. Your silence has made you complicit. Some species have tried to fight back. The combined fleet of the three major powers assembled a fleet of 8,000 ships and marched to intercept the human forces near the Granite Fork homeworld. They were met by 50,000 human ships. The battle lasted 6 minutes. Human weapons technology was centuries ahead of any other alien race. Human tactics were based on millions of years of evolution. Human ships moved like predators hunting their prey, coordinating their attacks with razor-sharp precision. When the firing stopped, not a single alien ship remained intact. The survivors floated in escape pods into space, sending messages of surrender, but no one responded. Admiral Morrison sent a message to all military forces in the galaxy. This is what the resistance brings. We have been preparing for this war for 200 years. We know the locations of all your ships. We know your weapons systems, your tactical doctrine, and your strategic plans. You cannot be surprised or defeated. All you can do is choose your own way of death. The psychological impact was devastating. Alien commanders planning a counterattack suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that had studied them for centuries. Every military secret they thought they possessed was already known to human intelligence. Every advantage they thought they had already been defeated. The Shadow Consortium attempted to organize a coordinated defense, but their communications were being intercepted and jammed by human spacecraft. Worse yet, it was discovered that many of their secure communication channels had been compromised for decades. Humans had been eavesdropping on their plans and reading their messages since the conspiracy began. Supreme Commander Vla made one last attempt to rally the Krillian force. As his planet's moon grew larger in the sky, casting an ominous shadow over his dying planet, he sent a message to all Krillian warriors throughout the galaxy. My people, we face extinction at the hands of human barbarism. But we are Krillian. We will not surrender. We will not beg for mercy. We will fight to the last man standing. It was not a Krillian warrior who replied, but Admiral Morrison. If that is their wish, they may fight to the death. But Commander Vrax, there is something you should be aware of regarding the drug users at Kepler 7 station. Morrison's image appeared on Commander Vrax's command screen. Behind her stood a figure that made Vraz's blood run cold. Arthur Sachs. He was alive and he was wearing a Terran Navy uniform. Sachs has been with us for 5 years, Morrison explained calmly. He had volunteered after a Shadow Consortium accident killed a comrade in arms. He drugged himself because they needed someone to hold accountable for Elena's assassination. He helped them identify all the Shadow Consortium members and their secret facility. Flack stared at his former comrade in shock and horror. You have betrayed your kind, Tux replied quietly but resolutely. I have betrayed a kind that has betrayed honor itself. The Shadow Consortium twisted everything a warrior should stand for. They fought from the shadows against the innocent. They had no courage, no integrity, no strength. Loyalty was of no importance. This revelation completely destroyed the Krillians' morale. If their war singers were in cahoots with the humans, if their most trusted commander was actually an enemy agent, then they had lost the war before it even began. Similar scenes played out across the Shadow Consortium worlds. Trusted allies revealed themselves to be human agents. Secret programs exposed as human espionage, and any advantages the aliens thought they had turned out to be illusions, cleverly maintained by human spies and saboteurs. The galaxy learned a harsh lesson that day. For 300 years humanity had pretended to be weak and primitive, while gathering intelligence and preparing for war. They had been patient, they had planned, and they had been relentless in their plan. The Shadow Consortium believed they were fighting a young, inexperienced species. Instead, they were fighting an apex predator that had mastered the art of hunting and killing anything that threatened it over millions of years. The war was effectively over in 72 hours, but the deaths continued for months, until human weaponry had served its purpose and the alien planet burned into the darkness between the stars. 6 months after the death of Elena Vasquez, the galaxy had changed dramatically. Admiral Sarah Morrison stood on the bridge of her flagship, overlooking what had once been called the Galactic Council headquarters. Now called Terra Station, it belonged to humanity. The former council chamber had been completely demolished and rebuilt. Where aliens once debated policy, now human administrators issued orders to a galaxy that had learned to obey. Admiral, the communications officer reported, "We have received a new surrender request, this time from the Spiral Arm Coalition. They are offering complete submission in exchange for protection." Morrison nodded impassively. Offers of surrender came daily. Unaware of the Shadow Consortium's existence, the aliens desperately sought to prove their innocence and escape humanity's wrath. They offered tribute, military service, and even their home planets in exchange for the promise that human fleets would never come to judge them. "Add them to the review list," Morrison said. "We'll evaluate their request after the review team has finished its work." The review team was one of Morrison's innovations. Human intelligence agents traveled the galaxy, examining the records of every species and government. They searched for evidence of Shadow Consortium involvement, human rights violations, or simple indifference to human suffering. Based on their findings, species were classified as allies, neutrals, or enemies. Allies gained protection and trade benefits for humans. Neutrals stayed out and were closely monitored. Enemies ceased to exist. The members of the Shadow Consortium were no longer in existence. Kralis Prime was a dead world. Its moon had ended in a deadly collision months earlier. Nebula Home was a toxic cloud drifting through space, its gases turning to toxic vapors. Zephyr Prime was a field of crystalline dust, and Music City was forever silent. The 17 worlds that had attempted to wipe out humanity were now nothing but dark rock and radiation. But the destruction of the Shadow Consortium was only the beginning. Humanity learned that the galaxy was filled with species that knew of humanity's suffering but chose to do nothing. Worse, many species were willingly complicit in the conspiracy. Through their silence and indifference, these species learned the cost of indifference. For 50 years, the Century Merchants Guild, under pressure from the Shadow Coalition, has refused to trade with human colonies. Now their trade routes belong to human corporations and their ships are banned from human space. Once the masters of galactic commerce, the guild members are forced to beg for permission to transport cargo between asteroids. The Academic Alliance rejected human university applications while allowing the Shadow Consortium's species to study human biology for weapons research. Their most talented scholars now served as research assistants to human scientists, grateful for every opportunity to contribute to human knowledge. Outlying religious groups taught that humans were spiritually inferior and unworthy of salvation. Now they spent their days in contemplation, pondering the theological implications of being conquered by the inferior race they had rejected. Morrison walked around the terrorist command center, observing the efficient work of the human administrators. They handled requests from alien governments, monitored compliance with human regulations, and coordinated the activities of enforcement fleets across the galaxy. "Status report," Morrison ordered. Commander Singh handed her a datapad. Compliance was at net. Most of the remaining resistance was far away, outside of effective enforcement range. Sources indicate they are planning to flee to other galaxies rather than submit to human authority. Morrison has reviewed the report. Some species have abandoned their home planets, choosing exile over submission to escape human judgment. They are welcome to leave. The galaxy will be better off without them. "How is the reconstruction effort going?" she asked, to which Shin replied that it was progressing ahead of schedule. "The Twilight folk are volunteering their entire industrial capacity to assist humanity in infrastructure projects. The Machine Collective is offering their computational services free of charge. Even former Shadow Consortium allies are seeking to prove their loyalty through material contribution." Morrison nodded. Fear is an excellent motivator, but it wasn't enough to create a stable galactic government. Humanity needed species that would not just submit, but would truly support its rule. Those species that actually aided humanity during the Shadow Confederation were rewarded accordingly. She walked to the observation deck, where a memorial to Elena Vasquez had been erected. The statue showed Elena as she was alive, full of hope and determination, extending a hand of friendship to the galaxy that had killed her. The inscription below read, "She came for peace." Those who responded with violence learned why peace is humanity's choice, not our nature. Every day, representatives of alien races came to Elena's memorial to make offerings. Flowers from worlds humanity had never heard of, works of art created by beings humanity had never encountered, poetry written in languages humanity was still learning. They had come here not because they loved Elena, but because they understood the cost her death had had on the galaxy. Her murder had awakened something in humanity the aliens were still struggling to understand. "Admiral," a voice said from behind them. Morrison turned to look at Jennifer Walsh, a former geologist who was now the director of alien affairs. The Peaceful Federation wanted to negotiate a rehabilitation agreement. They're seeking an amendment to the Cultural Preservation Clause. Morrison smiled slightly. The Restoration Accords were a blueprint for human governance of the galaxy. They established human authority while allowing aliens to maintain their cultures and governments, as long as they didn't conflict with human values. The process was complex and at times controversial. Alien practices that humans found abhorrent, such as the Vorton tradition of sacrificing criminals into black holes, were banned entirely. Other practices were adapted to human standards. In some cases they were actually adapted through human intervention. How? Morrison asked. Walsh explained that they wanted permission to maintain the traditional system of trial by combat, but were willing to accept human observers to ensure combat was fair and voluntary. Morrison considered this point. The Peaceful Federation was truly peaceful. Even during the Shadow Consortium era, they opposed the removal of humans from the Galactic Council and provided aid to human colonies whenever possible. They deserved consideration, she said, and should be approved, but make it clear that any abuse of the system would result in immediate termination of autonomy. This was how the new galaxy worked. Alien species that proved trustworthy were given greater freedom to govern themselves. Species with questionable records were subject to stricter scrutiny. Those with hostile records were placed under direct human rule. The regime was strict, but effective. For the first time in galactic history, there were no wars between the great powers, and piracy was virtually extinct. Trade was free under human protection, and even ancient enemies were forced to cooperate under human supervision. Some aliens called this a tyranny. Some called it peace. Morrison called it justice. She walked to another section of the memorial where, carved into black stone, were the names of 300 humans who had perished in the Shadow Consortium's experiments. Each name represented a life cut short by alien cruelty. Each name was a reminder of why humanity had become the dominant galactic civilization. "Admiral Morrison," another voice called. "This is Colonel Marcus Chen, the man who investigated Elena's murder and is now the head of human intelligence." "What's the matter, Marcus?" Morrison asked. "We've received a message from the Andromeda Galaxy," Chen said. "It seems that what happened here has reached other galactic communities. They wish to establish diplomatic relations with humanity." Morrison raised his eyebrows. "What diplomatic relation?" "One in which they promise never to threaten humanity's interests, and that we will never visit their galaxy," Chen answered with a smile. Morrison laughed. "It was the first time I'd said that since Elena's death. Even aliens in other galaxies had heard of humanity's reaction to Elena's murder. The story had become legend. A young race that had seemed peaceful and weak had proven itself to be the most dangerous force in the known universe. Please tell them I'm too busy to go to other galaxies right now, but remind them that we have excellent memories and very long lifespans," Morrison said. "If any of them ever try to harm humanity, we're happy to come along." The message was clear. Humanity is content to rule one galaxy for now, but its reach could expand far if necessary. The aliens of Andromeda and beyond must govern themselves wisely, knowing that the children of Earth are watching from afar. Morrison returned to the memorial to Elena Vasquez. 6 months ago, Elena stood before the Galactic Council, asking only for acceptance and cooperation. She offered friendship, and was killed in return. Now Elena's people rule the galaxy that rejected her. They ruled with unwavering justice and absolute authority. They brought peace with overwhelming force and unity with undeniable power. "You could have done better," Morrison said quietly to the statue. "You could have found a way to make them partners, not subjects. You always believed in the best for everyone." But Elena was gone, killed by the very aliens she had sought to befriend. The galaxy had responded to humanity's outstretched hand with violence and betrayal. Now they were living the consequences of that choice. Morrison gazed out the station's window at the stars. Somewhere in the vast darkness, human fleets patrolled the space lanes, maintaining peace. Human rulers ruled alien planets with strict but fair authority. Human scientists studied alien cultures and technologies, constantly seeking to improve galactic civilization. The galaxy was now safe, prosperous and peaceful, and united under human leadership. Children of all species could grow up without fear of war or oppression. Trade and culture flowed freely between worlds that were once enemies. It was everything Elena had ever dreamed of, and it had come true despite everything Elena had opposed. But Morrison had no regret. The galaxy had been forced to choose between Elena path and that of humanity. They had made the wrong choice, and they had paid the price. Now they lived under the rule of the race they had sought to destroy. With Elena's death, the era of human diplomacy ended. The era of human dominance will continue forever. In the end, the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest gift to the universe was not technology, culture, or ideals. It was humanity's self-restraint. When that self-restraint was finally broken, when humanity's pacifism was finally abandoned, the universe learned why Earth's apex predators had nothing else to fear. They sought to be neighborly. They were the rulers now, and in the cold mathematics of galactic politics, perhaps they always should have been. Elena Vasquez died seeking peace. Her death brought peace to the galaxy, though not in the way she wanted, but it was a peace that was eternal and absolute nonetheless, a peace enforced by a species that had long ago learned that sometimes the only way to protect those you love is to make yourself unforgettable to your enemies.